Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Welcome to the Center for Educational Media here at MTSU. This is the SPED Collaborative, the 2024 SPED Collaborative at MTSU's College of Education. We are so happy to have you here today, both on-site and online. And the SPED Collaborative's been in operation since 2022. That was the first time we met SPED Collaborative. We offer professional development to educators, to special educators. And we offer it not on topics that we determine you need, but on topics that you ask us for. And presenters in our sessions are people that have been nominated by you because of their good work in special education. So we also work in partnership with two important entities. One is Tennessee Department of Education, and the other one is 10 CEC. And we'll have representatives today from both of those organizations. So I want to start today by introducing one of our special partners, Dr. Alicia Pence. Would you join me up here? Dr. Pence is faculty in the College of Education, Special Education. She's also president of 10 CEC, who is one of our partners. So Dr. Pence was also the faculty liaison that helped us get the SPED Collaborative going. So you've helped us in many ways, and I'm so glad you're here. So please tell us about 10 CEC.
Yes. So just a show of hands, how many of you all are familiar with the Council for Exceptional Children? Who's heard of that? Okay. Oh, all right. Several of us. Good. CEC has been around since 1922. So we were at the very beginning of kind of the makings of special education and what it's come to be in the United States. So we're a professional organization. If you're not a member, I would encourage you to become a member because so many great things happen with CEC. So with your membership, if you're interested, it runs about $80 a year for a professional membership, which is a great, great bargain, let me tell you, because we have thousands of resources online for you. So the National CEC, well, we're really international now, we have just a website, a platform of all kinds of webinars, just like this one, that you can access, that would be free with your membership. And there's also, there's so many networks and ways for you to collaborate with other professionals as well through CEC. So we have our national CEC, but we also have our subunit, which is in Tennessee. So we are really interested in learning about what's happening in your school districts, how we can support you, and we're continuing to grow TN CEC, which is really fun. I look forward to getting to know all of you all. Please come up, talk to me about what's happening in your school districts, how we can support you as a professional organization, because we're all in this together, right? So I hope that you have a wonderful day. It's so great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pence. Y'all join 10 CEC because it's just one more link to a community of special educators. So I encourage you to do that. Let's get started with our first session then. Ms. Krista Crittenton is here today. She is from Tullahoma City Schools, preschool speech and language pathologist. So Ms. Crittenton, would you join us up here? And I will ask you please to continue your introduction, but thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Clark.
Ms. Crittenton was nominated, so we know she does good work. So we're eager to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you guys for coming today. I know that it's not easy to take time out of your busy schedules to come here today. All right, so to give you a little background on myself, I'm a speech-language pathologist and a proud member of the pre-K team for Tullahoma City Schools, which is a wonderful rural school system. We have a very small population, but I have also, in my 30 years of experience in special education, worked in some of the largest school districts in the country. My very first job right out of undergraduate was actually working for Hillsborough County Schools in Tampa, Florida. Now, you guys may have heard of Hillsborough County Schools just recently because they were the ones that got flooded out, right? So, and that's actually several of my colleagues were taking boats to get out of their houses just a few weeks ago. So I can tell you that, it's a very large school district. It actually encompassed all of, it was 20 miles north of Tampa and 40 miles south of Tampa. And I actually worked in one of the farthest districts south of Tampa, which was a little school district or school system called Ruskin. And it was 90% monolingual Spanish-speaking migrant farm worker population. So coming straight out of undergraduate, my first job was translating half of what I did into Spanish, which thankfully I had a degree in Spanish, or I didn't have a degree, but I had a lot of training in Spanish. In fact, that was my first major before I became a speech-language pathologist. So when I started in special education, I was actually a part of a collaborative program before we knew what collaboration was. I was actually accepted into the graduate program at USF, the University of South Florida, under the guise of what's called the mentor program. And it sort of exists, but not in the same way that it did when I was there in school. And what it was I was actually hired to work full-time in the school system as a bachelor's level speech-language pathologist while going to graduate school for USF. And the only way that this worked was Drs. Guilford, Dr. Mark Guilford and Dr. Lynn Guilford, were husband and wife. She was the director of special education for Hillsborough County. He was the head of the speech-language pathology department for USF. So they got together one day and said, hey, we don't have enough speech pathologists in the school systems. How do we fix this need? I know. Let's create a program where we can help them get into graduate school and we can have them help us teach students at the elementary school level. And so they put us together. And in this county, at the time when I was in it, we had over 200 speech-language pathologists. That's a lot of SLPs in one county. And I can tell you that we had a massive, massive caseload. My caseload was 95 students when I first got there, right? So one of the first students that I ever just really vividly remember, I was called into a classroom that was, so back in the day in the 1990s, special education was special ed. Okay, there was a difference, right? We were in the trailer park in the back of the school. Do y'all remember the trailer park? Some of you guys remember those days. Okay, so children were ability grouped, and they were grouped according to their disabilities. For example, we had learning disabilities, language disabilities, and then we had this grouping of children by their IQ of all things. And so we had children who were what we called educably mentally handicapped, meaning their IQ was in the 70s. They probably could learn something. We might be able to teach them. We might be able to get them some of those general credits like you were talking about in high school. Then we had another group called trainably mentally handicapped. We were like, yeah, we're going to be able to train them, but we're not going to be able to give them that lifelong learning experience. And then there were children that were in the severe to profound mentally handicapped program, and their IQ scores on a standardized test were between 20 and 40. That's a pretty significant impairment, right, on a standardized test. And I'm going to bring that out because I'm going to talk about that in a little while. So our assumption was these children will never learn anything. they will exist. And our job was to keep them safe for the 7 hours that they were in school and get them back to their parents. And we assumed that they were going to either live with their parents for the rest of their lives or they were going to be institutionalized. And this is the harsh reality of what special education was back in the day. Now, I was called into the severely, profoundly mentally handicapped classroom to do an evaluation on a child who was 12 years old, and he was in the 5th grade, and he was nonverbal. And so they wanted to see if maybe we could get him a communication device. And so I was brought in to kind of see what we could do, and I brought a communication device with me, and I showed it to the teacher, and I showed them the code on how to get into the device and modify it. Now, the whole time I'm showing them all of this, the student is behind me watching what I'm doing. And I thought, oh, how cute, drawing attention to task. Any SLPs will get that one and laugh, right? They're paying attention. That's awesome, because we didn't think they could even do that, right? So he's looking over my shoulders. I'm showing him the code to get in, and I'm showing him how to add buttons to the screen, and I'm showing him how, you can change things around and put different messages in. And, this child can't read. He doesn't know numbers. He's not going to know what to do. So I said, well, let's let him play with it for a while and just see if he starts to get a cause and effect reaction to it, right? So he starts pointing at these, he's playing with it. And I go over and talk to the teacher for a while, because that's what we do in special ed. We talk to teachers. We kind of ignore our students sometimes. No, not really. But, so I'm over here talking to the teacher and giving them some more information. And all of a sudden over here behind me, I hear, I got a gun. I got a gun. I got a gun. And I'm going, that's not on that device. So I go over, and in the 5 minutes that I had been distracted from that child had gotten into that computer system, had gotten the code, figured it out, gotten in the system, changed the lock code so I couldn't change it back, had put 5 new buttons on that machine, including typing out the sentence, I got a gun. Remind you, this is a child that we thought was severely, profoundly mentally handicapped. This child came into the room carried on his mother's hip, his feet almost dragging the ground. And yet, in spite of our special education at the time, this child had learned how to read, how to write, and how to lock me out of that system. And so I talk to you guys today, and my hope today is that we're going to learn that it's not us versus them. It's all special education. Everything that we do today is about special education. What I want to talk about today, I want you to be able to leave here today and have real-world, hands-on activities that you could walk into your classroom and do tomorrow with no budget. Okay? But I'm hoping after today, with the administrators that are in the room, at least their districts are going to have some budget. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to provide teachers with some things and some ideas and some things that you can do to help these children learn. Because every child has the potential to learn something. And every teacher has the potential to teach something. But when I first started in education, the most common sentence I heard was, somebody get this kid out of my classroom. That was the thought process. They can't learn in my classroom, so get them somewhere where they can learn. And this is where the idea of special education classes came from. And it was a great, don't get me wrong. Now, we made fantastic progress with a lot of our kids. That particular child that I told you about, who learned in spite of us, he graduated with a regular diploma. By the end of his junior year, he didn't even need the device. Turns out, he didn't have learning disabilities, he had severe apraxia of speech. And when we figured that out, then we could teach him the right way to learn how to communicate, and he was speaking in complete sentences. he actually got to speak at his graduation, and I was so proud. So there is a place for special classes. There still is, to this day, a place for, in our district, and I think throughout Tennessee, we call them highly modified instruction now, right? Because the idea is that we're modifying the instruction, not the child's. And I love that. I love that we've taken the focus off of modifying or changing the child, and we've figured out that it's not them that's the problem. It's us. And we got to figure out a way to help them learn. So somewhere along the way, the school districts changed. The school system in general changed, and instead of special classes being the emphasis and the focus, it became a focus of inclusion. And a lot of y'all were probably in the middle of that. I left special education. I was in it for 7 years, and then I left and I went into the private sector. And I worked as a speech pathologist in nursing homes, hospitals, home health, all kinds of different places. And then I came back to it 3 years ago, right after COVID. Because after working in a nursing home during COVID, I needed something new. I needed babies in my life. My daughter had just graduated high school and she was gone, and I needed something young and new and cute. So I went to a friend of mine and I said, oh, please, 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 what you got? And thankfully that friend of mine was also the most incredible, most awesome special education director for Tullahoma City Schools, and Dr. Wendy Wilkerson said, I've got a place for you. I want you to be my pre-K speech pathologist. And I have never been happier. I love what I do. But I'm gonna address your comments a little bit later in this talk, because this year I got to be the pre-K speech language pathologist, but I'm also helping with the push-in special ed kids in our high school. So in the mornings, I get to say more and, thank you and all done. And then in the afternoons, I get to do algebra and geometry and all kinds of fun, high school classical literature. And my brain hurts by the end of the day, but it's okay. It's all right. So now I want to talk a little bit as we move into this idea of inclusion. So inclusion became the model, inclusion became the push. And in Tullahoma City Schools, very, very fortunate, and I hope it's that way in most school districts now, that we are now, instead of saying, get this kid out of my class, we're saying, get this kid some help. We're saying it's not about modifying the child, it's about modifying the environment. And so I want to talk a little bit about accommodations versus modifications. So just for those, if there is someone who doesn't know, an accommodation is something we do to help the child access the general curriculum. We do not change the curriculum with an accommodation. We change how they access it. The best example of that is glasses. And I look out in the room and I see a lot of people wearing glasses. And it's very silly and kind of makes you want to laugh to say, well, it's not fair that she doesn't have glasses and you do, right? Take off your glasses. You should be able to see just like her. Otherwise, you can't be in my classroom. But how many times do we do that? How many times do we talk to general ed teachers and we're like, okay, well, they need a couple of accommodations in your classroom. You're going to probably want to give information in short, distinct steps, because they're not going to be able to hold it all in one time. Well, that's not fair. They should be able to do it just like everybody else. Well, not necessarily. It's not fair that my child has to wade through a mountain of excess information that this kid's brain just automatically wades through. So let's give them that accommodation, right? I'll give you a little story on this one. My daughter, we did not realize how visually impaired my daughter was until 3rd grade when she said, Mommy, is it normal to lose half of the class when I sit in the back? And I said, what? And she said, well, when I sit in the back of the class, I can't see from the 3rd seat up. I was like, no, that's not normal at all. So we immediately went to the eye doctor, and her vision was negative 4.25, and she never had glasses. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I had no idea that she couldn't see because she never said anything, right? And she made a way around it. She figured it out. But from that point on, she was wearing glasses and she wore contacts sometimes. But unfortunately, she was allergic to the latex in the contacts. And even the glass contacts, the solutions, her eyes would just break out. So she didn't wear them very often. But she was not a very athletic child, but she was good at swimming. This kid could swim like nobody's business. At 14, she'd already done all of the certification to become a scuba diver. She had already gotten to dive in 4 different countries by the time she was 15. And so at 15, in her sophomore year of high school, they had what's called class-on-class competitions, where the freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors all had to do these little relay races and everything, and they had to compete against each other. And she said, oh, there's a swim competition. I got this. I'm going to bring us to victory. We are going to win. I've got this, guys. I know it. And all of her classmates were hanging on the fact that she was going to be able to swim. And there was this one competition that they put her in charge of, that she was going to be the one. And all it was you had to dive down to the deep end of the pool and get a penny before the other group did, swim back to the other end and touch the edge of the wall, and then you would win, right? And it was a no-brainer. My kid was going to get this one. She knew it in her heart. She gets up to the day of the competition. She gets into the pool. She's ready to go, and she has her prescription contact goggles on because, remember, she can't see without them. And somebody says, hold up. That's not fair. She's got goggles on. She shouldn't have goggles. That's an advantage for her. She's blind, y'all. But do you know they insisted she take off her goggles? And they made her swim that competition without her glasses on. And unfortunately, she couldn't find the penny at the bottom of the pool. And it didn't matter how fast she could swim. It didn't matter how good she could dive. She couldn't see. And so their class lost. And she felt like she let everybody in the sophomore class down. Accommodations are the things we do to help our kids access what they wouldn't be able to access otherwise. When a teacher tells you, or when you as a teacher are told by someone, this kid does great in this area, but they need your help in this one. They need you to give them smaller steps, or let them sit closer to you, or maybe they need you to give them a break every once in a while. It's not an unfair advantage. It's what makes it fair. Now, modifications are slightly different. Modifications are still fair because there's what's needed for the child. But a modification is where you actually change the curriculum so that the child has a chance at success. And I say that it's still fair because what are you trying to teach? If you're thinking about it, are you trying to teach endurance to be able to do 100 math problems? Or are you trying to teach the concept that A plus B equals C? If you're trying to teach a concept, that child can learn that concept in 5 problems. They don't need to do 100 problems when their brain is going 90 miles an hour on everything else that they've got to do, and their little hands are struggling to even get one problem down. You know? So a modification is what you do to modify the curriculum. So you still teach it. It's still the same curriculum. It hasn't, the core value hasn't changed. What you're trying to teach hasn't changed. But you might change the way you teach it a little bit. You might cut out some of the problems. Or some kids don't do well on standardized testing. Remember my little guy I told you about earlier? That his IQ was 20 to 40 based on a nonverbal intelligence test? Right? Some kids don't do well in standardized testing. I don't do what, do you do well in standardized testing? Does anybody in this room, raise your hand if you do well in standardized testing? You do, okay. Congratulations, you are the 1 in 1,000. You would be special ed.
I was.
There you go. All right. A lot of us don't do well in standardized testing. My daughter was brilliant. She was reading at a college level in first grade. But whenever it came time to do standardized testing, her brain shut down. And she struggled. And she could do it. She could do it 5 minutes before, but the minute she got into the test, her anxiety levels went off the charts and she couldn't do it. Right? So for those kids, they might need breaks. They might need an alternative form of testing. They might need an alternative method of presentation. Some people, I had a student who had two things that he was struggling with. One was he was a high-functioning child on the spectrum, but he also was a stutterer. So can you imagine what would happen to a child like this in a group project or in an oral presentation? So you might want to modify that assignment for a child who's supposed to get up and give a lecture in front of a class. He might be the kid that you're like, you know what? Just write it. Just write it, and we'll have somebody else present it for you. Yeah? Or let's put him in a group with maybe a fewer number of kids because he can't handle a whole group, right? So we might modify the assignment some. So inclusion itself is the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized, such as those who have physical or intellectual disabilities and members of other minority groups. This is the definition of what inclusion is. And in inclusion, we expect the teachers to become a jack of all trades. But do you ever feel like you're a master of none? But I love the rest of that quote. We don't often quote the bard all the way in this quote because he says, but oft times better than a master of one. So even if you're not a master, even if you are an inclusion teacher and you feel like you're getting some of it, but you're not getting all of it, you're still doing better than what we were doing before. Because your children are at least in the environment where they have the opportunity to learn the standards that they're expected to know. They're at least in there. And they can pick up a lot more than we realize. Kids, what is that old saying? Little pictures have big ears. Yeah, they pick up a lot. If you really want your kids to learn something in your classroom, whisper it. Because if they don't think you want them to know, they'll listen really close, right? Yeah, you yell all day long, they won't hear a word you say, but you start whispering. Oh, wait, what'd she say? Did she say we were going to have snack? I mean, they're going to get it, right? So for teachers, I know that inclusion can be really, really hard. And I struggle with it myself, and I'm the inclusion specialist. I'm the one that's supposed to be going into the classroom and helping these teachers have inclusive ideas and work with these kids and help them reach the standards. And I struggle with it because every teacher is different, and every teacher's classroom is different. And not every teacher wants to give up the way they've always done things, or change or modify themselves in any way. And sometimes they view me as the snake in the grass. They view me as the interloper coming in, trying to make them do these things. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm here to do. But it is hard. It is hard, and I get that. So for all of you gen ed teachers, God bless you. God bless you so much because you have taken on a mountain. But you're not alone. You don't have to do it alone. I love this quote from John Donne. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe would be the less. And the rest of that quote, any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sin to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. You guys aren't alone in this. We're here to help. That is our job, to help you help the students become who they're supposed to be. And when we lose gen ed teachers, we are the worse for it. We are the sadder for it. So whatever we can do to help them feel like They still have a purpose and a mission, and they're not alone. That's what we want to do as special educators. We've got to be able to help them see that it's not about you, it's not about me, it's not about getting them out of our class. Let's help everybody together. Let's work on this together. So collaboration is the key that unlocks the door to inclusion. What is collaboration? It's the action of working with someone to produce or create something. Pretty simple, right? The action of working with someone. So who do we work with? We can collaborate with administration. We can collaborate with other general education teachers. We can collaborate with special education teachers, with related service providers like myself, with RBAs and BCBAs, with parents. We can even collaborate with students. And when we do, what are we trying to produce? So remember, it's the action of collaborating with someone to produce something or someone. What are we trying to produce? Isn't the goal of education to produce strong, independent, successful, confident, lifelong learners and educators who actively participate in and positively contribute to society as a whole? Now, I'm going to blow your minds today because that is actually not what education was designed to be. Did y'all know that? Did y'all know that when the public education system was set up, it was designed to make factory workers? In fact, I just recently attended a training from a lady from UT, and she gave, and I wish I had it, I did it after I turned this in, but there's a quote from Rockefeller that says that the goal of public education is not to create dreamers or thinkers or those who can reason for themselves. It is to create people who are able to make things, follow the rules, and do what's expected of them. And I think we've done a good job of meeting that goal, but this goal is what real education is supposed to be about. There's also something that blew my mind the other day that I learned in this other training. Do you know that the word education comes from a Greek word, edus? And do you know what that word actually means? It means to draw out. To draw out from something. How many times do we in education, especially in special education, think that our goal is to cram as much information into the heads of these little kids, whether they want it or not, right? I've never thought about education as something that you're trying to draw out of them what they already know. You're trying to draw out of them what they just learned. You're trying to take what's in them and help them get it out. That changes the game for me. I don't know about you, but that changes the game for me. Now that we've remembered our why we educate, because we want to create those confident, those contributing members of society, those educators themselves. We want them to become educators, right? Because whenever one child says to another child, hey, if you hold your pencil like this, you can do it a little bit better. They've become an educator, right? So we're not only trying to create these educators, that's part of what we're doing, but we're trying to draw out of them what we've spent years putting into them. Let's talk about how we're going to do that. How do we collaborate with administration? It can be summed up in 2 words: time and support. The fact of the matter is that teachers do not have enough time to plan in their classrooms. If it doesn't include food, it should not be a meeting, it should be an email. I'm going to say that again. If it did not include food, it should not be a meeting, it should be an email. Half of the time we spend in the week leading up to school in all these meetings could have been put in an email. And we could have had that time to actually plan in our classrooms. Now, I am very, very proud that our district has started to realize this. And so we've actually been putting into place, not only at the beginning of the school year, but also throughout the school year, grade level planning sessions. And I'm so excited to see them doing that. They're like, you know what? We're going to take this time, and for this set time, and they're not making them long either. They're not doing all day ones, because we just don't have the manpower. We don't have the subs. We don't have all that stuff. But what they are doing is they're saying, okay, 2 hours in the afternoon, we'll get you a sub for all your grade level. Today is the 5th grade day. Tomorrow's the 4th grade day, 3rd grade. And what's awesome about that is because special ed teachers, guess what? If you've got a 3rd grader, you can go join that 3rd grade planning meeting. So you know what 3rd grade is teaching so that you can then also help, right? But it takes our administrators to do that. They've got to make that available for us. And the other thing is support. I follow this one guy on Facebook, and he talks about, as an administrator, he gave up his office, and he uses a rolling cart, and he administrates from the hallway. And he spends most of his day popping into classrooms of the teachers going, hey, you need to go for a restroom break? I'll take the kids. What would you do if your administrator walked into your classroom? Do you have a general ed class, or are you a SPED?
Me?
Yeah.
SPED.
All right, in your SPED class, if your administrator walked in and said, hey, I'll watch the kids for 5 minutes, you want to go take a bathroom break?
That would be awesome, because sometimes you just got to go.
Sometimes you just got to go. Bless their hearts, nurses and teachers have bladders of steel, right? They never get to go when they need to. But the administrator, in this particular administrator, he actually talks about doing that kind of stuff. And did that cost him any money? Not really. I mean, yeah, he had to pay for some coverage for the classes when they're doing their planning periods. But in the long run, this didn't cost a whole lot to give that time and that support. The other thing I'm going to say is, we were talking about how they're having grants come out. And those are awesome. I love grants. Thank you so much for the support and the money. Don't ask a general ed teacher to fill out a grant for money. Please. They've got enough on their plate. Please don't ask a SPED teacher to do it. We really got enough on our plates. You know what? That's a great way that our administrators can support us. Y'all do the grants. Just tell us, hey, we got you money, here you go. This is what you got to do to keep it, right? Y'all got enough, we got enough stuff going on. We don't need to be doing that. But they're nice to have. I actually put in a grant myself, a request for a grant, and I'm hoping that it gets approved, where we're going to actually try to do a collaboration with not only special educators, general educators, our sports specialists, but we're also going to be bringing in our local physicians, nutritionists. We're going to be trying to bring in some outside speakers. We're going to be we're going to see if we can't organize and get Tin Tan to come, and maybe even Toby Dynavox and PRC, and have them come and teach our parents about doing communication devices. And but it's not just for special ed kids. So what I've written for is a grant that's called School Preparedness. It's actually going to be teaching parents what they can do to prepare their kids to be ready to walk into school in pre-K or kindergarten. And we filled out a grant for that, and I'm waiting to see if we get it. But I would love it, because it's not on me to do the presentations. All I do is set it up with the local providers that are going to be able to come in, and doctors are going to be able to say, hey, listen, no more than 30 minutes of screen time. Come on, right? And you're going to hear it from a doctor. You're not going to hear it just from your educator. Or you're going to have a nutritionist come in and say, hey, guys, they can't live on Coke and chips. I know they like them, but they can't live on them. You're going to have to give them some nutrition. So let's figure out how we do that, right? So we're going to have extra people coming in to help our families. And that's a great grant. But time and support is good for administration. How do we collaborate with general education? General educators, God bless you, God bless you, God bless you. We love you, we love you, we love you. You are the ones who are the standards and expectations experts. We need to remember that. How often do we as special educators or as Related service providers walk into a room and treat a general ed teacher as if we have more knowledge than they do. If we do, we shouldn't. I've done it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I've done it. I've walked in and said, okay, this is what you need to know. In reality, what I should have been asking is, hey, what do they need to know? And then when I find out what the students need to know, I can say, hey, we can meet that standard, but we're going to need this accommodation or this modification. The reality is that there are so many standards and expectations and general education and special education information and accommodations and modifications that you and I can't be the expert on everything. That's why we work together with other people. That's why we collaborate. And our general educators, they are the experts in what the children are supposed to know, right? So we need to give them credit where credit is due. And we need to work to their strengths. We need to see what it is that that teacher does great, and we need to help them to make that area shine, and then we need to find out where it is we could go in and help where they're struggling. But we need to let them be the ones to tell us where they're struggling. We don't need to be the ones going in and telling them, oh, you don't know how to teach my kids. They're their kids. Let's get that through our heads as special educators right now. That is their classroom. Those are their kids. And it's not us versus them. We're all in this together. We're here to support the teacher so that the teacher can support the student. All right, so standards and expectations. How do we collaborate with special education? All right, I love this. Somebody said this once, that special educators are the experts in flexibility. And I love that because you guys are the experts in the accommodations, modifications, and strategies that children need to be able to reach those standards. You were asking earlier about how do we help my kids in high school be able to access the curriculum so that they could graduate with a regular diploma. Accommodations, modifications, and strategies. And it's a matter of getting together with a teacher. And it could just be one. You could just say to one of your teachers, find the one that is the most open to it. There's always one. It's usually the coach. Y'all ever notice that the coach that gets thrown into history class, right? He's the one that's like, oh yeah, sure, well, I'll take whatever you got. What do you got? And you're like, okay, listen, so this guy, he has a hard time writing things down. Can we get somebody to help him write stuff down? Well, yeah, hey, we got a student over here that loves to talk the whole time. Let's put her to work writing stuff down for the kid that doesn't know how to write. You know, or we've got another kid over here that, man, they really do not like other kids. I mean, they can't stand being around other kids, all right? So, but they love their computer. Okay, let's set them up in their own little cozy zone. Let's give them a nice little spot where they can hang. We got this one kid in the high school that I'm working with, and when I first approached her, I thought, this is wrong. This is really bad. She's in the back of the classroom. She's sitting on a beanbag. She's got her laptop propped up in her lap, and she's just all chilled back there. She looks like she's completely separated from the rest of the class. She's got her own little lamp that's sitting on her in the back of the classroom, and she's got her headphones on, and I'm thinking, we've isolated this kid. But the new me was like, okay, wait, let's figure out what's going on here. And I go back to her, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, yeah, well, we're just learning about Animal Farm. You know, George Orwell's Animal Farm, right? So the class is listening to the story. She's listening to it. She's listening to it through her headphones. She's also listening to music while she's listening to it. But she's listening to it. She's listening to the story about it. And I start asking her about it. And I'm like, so what's going on? Kid could tell me everything that had happened in that story up until that point. And figured out she has an audiographic memory. She remembers most of what she hears. Now, the next day she couldn't remember who I was because her visual memory is terrible, but her audiographic memory is great. And the system that they have set up for her, she designed. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, about how you can involve your students in their own education. But she was the one that went to the teacher and said, listen, I can't sit for long periods of time in a chair. I'll get antsy. I got to move, but I love beanbags. And she's like, I can't stand taking notes, but I love typing. And I don't like being around other kids, but I'll be okay in this corner. She put herself in the corner. It wasn't a punishment. And that kid is accessing the curriculum and loving what she's learning. So there's a way to do it, but it's through accommodations, modifications, and strategies, right? How to collaborate with behavior specialists. This is a hot topic these days. These guys are the experts at analysis and alternatives. They've been trained in discrete behavior analysis. These are the scientists in your school district. They are the ones that can look at what a child is doing and see the antecedent behavior, what caused the meltdown, what happened during the meltdown, and what happened in the cool down. And they can view it from an analytical mindset that I could never do. Because when I'm involved in a behavior, my instinct is to pick, I have preschool students, so it's okay. My instinct is to pick up the kid and move them. But my RBAs and my BCBAs, they're like, hold on. Let's step back. Let's let them come up with a way to self-soothe. Let's let them figure out how they got themselves into this mess and how they're going to get themselves out of it. Right? And they're so good at giving you alternative ways of approaching a child. That same young lady in the beanbag with the laptop and the whole bit, when I read her IEP, it talked about the fact that she had spent most of the previous year in an alternative school because she had spent the year before that cussing out every teacher she had. Now, she'd never been physically violent, but she was very verbally aggressive. And what our BCBA figured out from watching her and working with her was this kid does not, first of all, she has visual agnosia, which means she doesn't recognize faces. So if she doesn't recognize your face, she doesn't have a connection with you. She doesn't know that you care about her. She doesn't even know you're a teacher or a child. She doesn't see that, right? So you approach her and you get in her face and you're like, I said, turn off that computer and get down to what you're supposed to be doing. Her reaction is going to be the same as a caged tiger, which is what it was, right? Because she doesn't know you from Adam. She knows somebody is getting in her face and trying to get her to do what they want to do when she's got her own set of priorities, right? So that same kid is now in a general education classroom, accessing the curriculum, using accommodations, modifications, to be able to get the standards that she's supposed to have been getting all along so that she can graduate with a regular diploma. Because someone took the time, our blessed BCBA said, let's try this instead. When we want her to pay attention, let's shoot her an email. She doesn't respond to my face, but she responds to what comes on the computer. So the teacher started doing that. She's got a Chromebook. They shoot her an email whenever they want her to do something. Buddy, it's done like that. Kids accessing the curriculum now. She's doing a fantastic job. She's learning, she's listening, she's paying attention. She doesn't look like she's paying attention. Half the time you think she's just drawing, which she is, but she's also listening. And because remember, she has that audiographic memory, she can hear everything and she can remember it. And when she takes those tests, she's getting hundreds. That's pretty awesome. But they had to figure out a way to give her an alternative so that we could de-escalate or even prevent the behavior, right? So how do we collaborate with me, related service providers? And that's not just speech pathologists, but your OTs, your PTs, your vision experts, your hearing experts. I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but there's all kinds of them out there, right? We have expertise in our area. I am not an expert in education. Let me say that again. I am not an expert in education, but I am trained in child language development. So I can tell you how the brain is supposed to work, how language is supposed to develop based on what we've studied and known. I can tell you what things should help in an instance where you have a child, for example, my little guy that was nonverbal, let's try this, let's try that. You'll hear a lot of let's try with related service providers. We're kind of willing to try different things. Equipment. We're the ones that'll give you access to your equipment, right? I love my PTs whenever they come in. I'm like, this kid's not, I mean, he wants to access the world, but he's just sitting here, and we have to carry him everywhere because his legs don't work. And they're like, let's get him a standing frame. Let's get him a standing moving frame. Let's get him a wheelchair that actually is custom fit for him. Let's get him some DAFOs to put on his legs so that when he stands up, he can actually stand and be able to be steady and reach the toys on the top shelf so he's not only playing with the blocks on the bottom shelf, right? They get our equipment for us, and they provide the understanding. Their goal is to help you understand that he's not being rude. He literally has 3 to 5 words in his head that he can put together in a sentence. And please and may I are not part of those 3 to 5 words. It's not because he's being rude. It's because he's lucky he can say, I go potty, right? We'll work on please and thank you as we go. But we can provide you with the understanding of why. I'm not just a speech therapist, I'm a speech language pathologist. So my job is to understand why, where the breakdown is happening, what's the change in the brain that's causing the issue. So we can help you with that. We can help with the expertise, the equipment, the AAC devices, the high, mid, low tech communication, the understanding of what's changing in the brain so that we can help with things. The vision specialists, our lovely, wonderful vision specialists, and how they help our kids access the curriculum, just a magnifying glass. What it can do, they've got some great programs now that they can actually see stuff with on the computer, and they can help us get that in there for them. So how do we collaborate with parents? Empowerment and encouragement. You mentioned earlier that you were the parent of a special needs child. Did you ever feel going into the IEPs intimidated?
I was already in special ed.
You were already in special ed, so you had a level of comfort?
Well, we kind of grew up together.
And you kind of grew up together. I like that. A lot of our parents, especially because I'm coming in at the very beginning, as the pre-K assessment specialist, I'm usually getting them when they're 2.5 because the TEIS kids are coming to me.
All
right?
the initial testing was very overwhelming.
The initial testing was overwhelming, yes, exactly. Because they're throwing numbers at you left and right, and 85 and 115 and standard deviations and all these words, and they've got all of these different statistics they're showing you, and my eval reports are like 8 pages long. I'm sorry, because this is what, I'm required to make sure I have all this information in there, but then I have to interpret everything that I've written, right? Because it's nobody speaks like that. But we've got to do a better job of empowering our parents. One of the things that I've learned to do is to talk to my parents as if they're the expert on that child. We don't walk into a teacher's classroom telling them we're the experts. They're the experts. We don't walk into a parents' meeting telling them we're the experts. They're the experts.
I'm an interventionist, so it kind of helps me because my son is on the spectrum. So he's like, there's so much, you look at him and he looks normal, and a lot of teachers have a problem with that. They're like, he's just a behavior problem. Like, he's not just a behavior problem. He's got different things in his head than most kids, so
she said that she's an interventionist, which helps her understand, but there are a lot of times whenever people look at her child and they see he looks normal, and he's on the spectrum, and so they assume that he's just a behavior problem, but they don't understand. But we need to view our parents as experts on their children, because before they ever got to us, they were living with them. They were the ones dealing with them 24/7, 365 days a year.
I will say I fought for this kid because I know a lot more than most parents do, and he started the year as a junior, and by the end of August had finished all of his schoolwork, and he's going to graduate in December. He's only got to take his end of course test, and it's blown my mind because all the teachers that were like, oh, this kid, I'm like,
Hold on, before you say anything else, we want to give you the microphone. We want to give you the microphone, Mama. Say that again, because we need to hear, the people online need to hear this.
I just wanted to say that my son, who was the behavior problem, because I'm an interventionist and I know a lot more things that will help most students, I fought for my child. And he got to go into a program where he started this year as a junior, and by the end of August had finished all of his schoolwork to graduate. He did 2 years. It just blew my mind because they left him alone. The program he went to let him come in the morning, eat his breakfast, and sleep for an hour. And most people would see that and think, oh my God, these teachers, they don't want to do anything with him. But that's what he needed because he has trouble sleeping because of the things that keep him awake at night.
Classic story on the spectrum, isn't it? There's a lot of kids on the spectrum that do not sleep.
Like the kid you were talking about earlier, he knew things that nobody ever knew because they never took the time to ask him or try to understand him because he wasn't normal like the rest of the kids. And I'm like, nobody's normal. That was the first thing I had to teach the teachers was that there's no normal. All of your kids in this class are different, including my son. And when I came into pre-K and he was sitting in the corner in a desk, I was fit to be tied. I was about to get that teacher, and she said, no, he asked to be put over there because the other students weren't doing what they were supposed to, and he couldn't concentrate. And I was like, okay. So Mama also had to learn how to listen to her son because I was about to fight for him being put in the corner, and he wanted to be there. So he did better when he was separated, and he ended up graduating 1.5 years early. So
that is the goal.
Kudos to him.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mom, for sharing. That is the goal. So does that help start to answer some of your questions?
It does, but I mean, one of my big things is that I communicate with parents from the day, like at the beginning of the school year. Mm-hmm. I'm the case manager. I'm going to work with your child and you. Oh, sorry. I work with parents from the very beginning. And some of these, the blessing this year is that I've worked with these kids for 2 years. And now I've moved to the high school and I have them. Mm-hmm. So I know them, I know the parents, I've built a rapport, but communication, like even if it's a weekly email saying, hey, they're behind, we need to work on this, and I don't mind that because I've had parents come to me broken by the time I get them in because they've moved from a different county mm-hmm. and they were stuck in a corner. And when you meet the child, they're like, oh my gosh, just like sunshine. Like you see them and they're happy. And yes, they have learning struggles, but if you really listen to them, they learn a lot. They know stuff, but nobody gives them credit because they're too busy, they make noises when they get frustrated or they get overwhelmed, and you're like, but he's learning, ask him a question. Mm-hmm. And some of the parents, some of the teachers started doing that, and they go, oh, he really does know that. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So the parents are, and not that I'm an expert, I'm not a perfect and I can always learn, but just the communication with a parent makes a huge difference because you're saying, I'm in this with you. Mm-hmm. And so when they hear the child, like that, they see a grade that's not quite where it needs to be, and they're like, I can document. I said, this is because they've done this, this, and this, but we're working on, working with them to get that up and making sure the work is completed because just because you have struggles doesn't mean you can't not do anything.
Right.
And so building a positive relationship with a parent is essential.
Yes. And it's not just about building a positive relationship and that you trust me. I've got to learn to trust you. I have got to make sure that you are empowered to advocate for your child. I've got to trust that you have the child's best interest at heart. And when you're telling me these things, it's not because you're trying to have him be lazy or you're trying to excuse his behaviors or you're just trying to get money from SSI. I've got to listen. I've got to listen. And go, okay, so what you're telling me is that you feel like your child learns better in the afternoon than in the morning. So then that tells me that I'm going to communicate with the general education teacher, hey, this kid does his best learning in the afternoon. So what if we get an extra learning group in the afternoon and we review what we learned in the morning, right? Because then now my teacher is empowered to go, you know what? When I asked him questions in the afternoon, he got it. He heard me this morning even when I thought he wasn't listening. And he got it. And then we solidified it in the afternoon. Thank you so much, parent, for advocating. Thank you so much, special education teacher, for letting me know. So we're communicating with everyone on that part. And the other thing we got to do is we got to encourage these parents. Y'all, they haven't slept in however long that child has been alive. You realize that? You think they wear you out in class? Imagine going home with them. They're tired. They need some encouragement. They need some love. Those parents need to be told they're doing a good job. One of the first things that I tell parents is that you did not cause your child's autism. Do you know how many parents need to hear that? You did not cause your child's learning disability. You did not cause your child's language impairment. I didn't cause my child's vision problem. I didn't see it. I didn't realize it. When I did, I tried to help, right? When you know better, you do better. But telling these parents, you're the expert, and we're here to empower you to advocate for your child so that we can all together collaborate for that child's best interest. And we're going to get there. Don't give up, Mama. Don't give up. They're going to graduate. They're going to get it. They're going to get there. So how do we collaborate with students? We give them ownership. And I'm talking from pre-K. We give them ownership. It's not just when they're seniors in high school and we go, man, you're a senior in high school. You should be writing your own name now, right? No. We give them ownership in pre-K. From the moment they start in my classroom, my first thing is, this is your talker. This is your classroom. This is your therapy session. What do you want to learn? What do you like? What do you want to know about? I love it. We have this one gen ed teacher who's a coach. That's why I mentioned that. And he is so fantastic, and he teaches environmental science. And if you don't know, a lot of SPED kids love bugs and creepy crawlies of every kind, right? It's something, they're drawn to them. They're drawn to every creepy, crawly, slimy, scaly, weird thing that's out there, right? Some of them. Now, some of them can't handle the touching it, but they love watching it, right? So they love this, and he knows that about them. He knows that these kids, they love these animals in his classroom, so he has them all over his room. He's got iguanas, and he's got crawdads that they go down to the creek and they actually, gather up. Thank you. And they do all these things, and he tries to incorporate them. So if he sees a kid that's having a hard time paying attention and focusing during a lesson, say on, glaciers and environmental science and how the glaciers are melting and all these other things, what he'll do is he's got this one iguana in his class, and I want to say her name is Liz, but I'm not for sure. And he takes her over, he picks her up out of the cage while he's talking and he's teaching the kids, and he goes and he sits her down right next to the kid that's antsy and wiggling. Just puts her on the desk right beside it, and he walks away and just keeps on teaching. And that kid is suddenly on task because he's got Liz, and he's ready to rock and roll now because that's his buddy. And Liz just sits on his. It's awesome. The weight of an iguana. Weighted vests are great, but a scaly weighted iguana even better. For that kid, he loves it. He puts it on his shoulder. It grounds him. It anchors him. He feels that thing just loving on him. It gets up in his hair, But for him, that's what he needs, right? So give him ownership. We just had an election. Can you imagine how cool a classroom would have been in government to have had a mock election? Can you imagine how cool that would be to put these kids and say, hey, listen, you two are running for president. Create your campaigns. Let's see what you can do. Give them some ownership. Give them an opportunity to say, I got to take a nap in the morning. Don't bother me. I need to learn in the afternoon. I need a comfy chair. I do better if you don't talk to me face to face. Let them help you understand what they need. So here's some collaboration ideas and strategies that I want you to be able to take home today. First one, the most important thing is multimodal approach. Not every child learns visually by taking notes. I was not a visual learner. I'm an auditory learner. I learn by what I hear. I have to doodle and scribble and do anything but look at the pictures on the board, or I won't remember what I've heard. The visuals distract me. Other kids are movers. The older I get, I have to move or I fall asleep. Anybody like that? You know, now I have to move. But we used to call them motor kinesthetic learners, right? They have to learn by movement. Some kids, basically it's like this. If you teach a lesson, they need to be able to see it, hear it, feel it, taste it, touch it before they'll know it. If you do that alone, you will reach half or more of your class by making a multimodal approach to teaching. Shared experiences. Our kids may not come from our same background. I was not a monolingual Spanish-speaking migrant farm worker. So I had to learn how to address my children whose lives change every single month, every time the crops go out, because they have to move to the next town or the next state, who leave behind everything because all they can take is what they can carry. But I do remember moving a lot as a kid. So we came up with some shared experiences that we could connect to each other with. Plan ahead. Back to that thing with administration. Give us time to plan. We need it. But plan ahead. Think about what you're going to teach. Think about it. Think about those kids in your class when you're thinking about what you're going to be teaching. And think about, ooh, Johnny loves chocolate. So if I tell the story, if you give a mouse a cookie, I'm not just going to tell the story. I'm going to go buy some chocolate chip cookies. And we could have a milk and cookie party. Can you imagine how much your kids would be listening while they're eating their milk and cookies while they're listening to the story of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie? And especially if you're telling the story of If You Give a Mouse a Cookie and he says he's probably going to ask for a napkin and you're passing out napkins while you're reading the story and then the kids are going, napkins? Does that mean we're going to get a cookie? And so then they're really listening and you're not saying a word, you're just passing out. Yeah. And then you come back by and you're putting out the cookies. And kids are going, oh, and then you put out the milk, and they're just like, ah, right? It's so cool. But you have to plan that stuff ahead. Now, I'll take some experience from whenever I worked in the nursing home, because we're lifelong learners. We had a little lady who every day thought that she was waiting for the taxi to come and take her home. She had dementia. And every day she'd get up and dress to the nines, put on her little scarf and her little heels and her little knee highs, and she'd go and sit out in the lobby and just wait for the taxi to come take her home, right? So we wanted to try and plan ahead for her a little bit, and we wanted to give her a good feeling. So we actually printed tickets for her, so that she could have this ticket that would say, your taxi will be here in 5 minutes, or your taxi will be here in 10 minutes. Or when it was time for her to actually go home, her family was there, but we actually paid for her to have a taxi, and she got to go home in a taxi because every day that's what she got up. She wanted to go to the taxi, right? So we had to plan ahead for that. When you're doing that with your kids, plan ahead. Think about what you're going to do. There's a great story on the news about a teacher who actually she wanted to take her children to Mexico, but of course she couldn't afford to go to Mexico, right? So she found a video online of an airplane first-person view of going to Mexico. Did you guys see that on the news? It was on the national news. And so she got the kids to actually bring in suitcases with their clothes packed for a trip to Mexico, to dress like they were going to Mexico, even though they were like in Minneapolis or something. It was really, really cold. And she's like, bring your summer clothes. We're going to change when we get to the airport. She took them into the library as if that was the airport, had them go into the bathrooms, go change their clothes into their summer clothes, come back out into the library, use the big screen, and they got on the plane. They had chairs lined up, and they flew to Mexico. And when they got there, she brought them back into the classroom. When they walked in the classroom, the teacher's aide had already put out some wonderful salsa music was playing on the radio, and it was just, the mariachi was playing, and everything it was so cool. And the kids were like, we're really in Mexico, right? They bought into it because the teacher planned ahead, and she made it a learning experience for them. Shared responsibilities. Remember the ownership thing? Even the parents. Give them some opportunity to share in this. We're going to Mexico. Can y'all make some tacos? We're going to Mexico. Can y'all, if you have a Hispanic parent, can you come in and talk a little bit about your experience in Mexico? You know, we're going to have a milk and cookie party. Can you come join us? Make the cookies. Maybe we'll make them together as a class. Maybe we'll sit down and we'll make cookies together. Whatever it is that you're going to do. In the high school setting, share some responsibilities. You know, this is your curriculum. This is what you've got to learn. So here, I'm going to give you a list, and we're going to break it down so it's not overwhelming. But this is what you need to do today, tomorrow, and the next day. You show me when you've got those things done. Give them some responsibility. Play to your strengths. Not everybody is a talker. I am, obviously. But not everybody's a talker. Some teachers, they lead from behind. They're quiet. Their classrooms are quiet. But you got a kid falling asleep in the back. So maybe you need to add the excitement in the room. You know? Not every teacher has all the power and the strength of a certain teacher. You know, maybe they don't have the same shared experiences, but you do. So you can give that strength to the teacher that does it. And then do the unexpected. And that one can be a lot of fun. So I got a couple examples here. Never underestimate the power of the fur. This is my pet bunny. Her name is Chloe. She comes to pre-K every year when we do the letter B. And she also comes again whenever we do the letter H. And she comes every Friday. She's my friend. And everybody loves Super Bunny. She teaches them how to listen because she's got long ears, so she can really listen. She teaches them how to non-verbally communicate. When she's mad, she stomps her foot. Right? So then they know they can do that when they're mad. So there's a lot of neat things that you can do with critters. This is my fabulous pre-K team. And in this one picture, I've got the teacher, who's in the middle, my two of my pre-K aides, and then that's our SPED coordinator. And then there I am. And we all collaborated so we could be wearing the same shirt. We even bought the shirt together, right? Because we're all part of a team. And this is only one of my teams that I'm involved in. But I love that we have a team, that we work together. This is what I'm talking about with Do the Unexpected. We were doing a lesson on the 20s. So I dressed up like a flapper, walked into school. That was not expected. But it does definitely gets their attention. They're like, what? So now I'm going to give you guys a chance to do something together, okay? We're just going to do one because we only got about 5 minutes left. So first scenario is elementary school class. How can you collaborate with your school to make a fire drill more sensory friendly? Anybody got an idea? Because I need your ideas because we have them every month. You got a room full of children with sensory issues.
I work at a high school, and our principals are very good about emailing ahead of time that they're going to have a fire drill, and we know not exactly when, but close to when, and they have like an aide that is ready to be there with headphones for the kids who have trouble with the high sensory, because I worked in a CDC class, and we had one that would just wig out. So we learned that if we found out ahead of time, and we just happened to be outside when the fire drill happened, then he didn't have an issue with it. And it also made the fire captain happy, because he's like, well, you can't tell when a fire's going to happen, so you're never really going to know. But now we know that we have somebody with headphones all the time in case it does happen. You know, we planned ahead.
You plan ahead as much as you can.
That's how we made our fire drills friendlier.
Okay. So here's another scenario. Middle school classroom. This one's going to be fun. How can you collaborate with your parents to address preteen hygiene and social skills? Anybody got an idea on this one? I'll tell you what one of our parents did. One of our parents actually worked for Johnson & Johnson. They're like, listen, we will provide you with all of the deodorant and perfume and lotion that you need for every classroom in the middle school. So the teachers in one of the schools that I worked at, they actually had hygiene closets. And they had all the everything that they needed for guys, for girls, for anything, so that if they needed something, they could go to the closet whenever they needed to. And if they didn't know they needed it, because sometimes preteen boys will avoid a bath like the plague, the teacher would just very quietly, during the middle of class, not when she's in the middle of a lesson, just go and get Axe body spray and put it over there. Just pass it along, just a little hint. Might even take a shower next time, right? Anybody else got one?
We've addressed it in a couple of ways in our school district. There's some wonderful resources online, depending on the cognitive level of the student, on some social narratives on hygiene at a middle and high school level, kind of going back to the CDC classrooms. So we've addressed it in that way. We've also worked with families on developing what we call in our field a task analysis, just a checklist, and show the families how that works. A lot of the students are used to using those in the school setting, so they're familiar. A visual is familiar for them. And so just the checklist, these are the things that we do. And so just clearly defining those expectations for the students on a lot of our kids on the spectrum, as you know, don't have a social awareness, where some students may pick up on social cues that maybe they have a funny smell and people are acting different around them. A lot of their kids on the spectrum don't have that social awareness, or it's limited. And so teaching them that as well. There's a couple of resources that are available, some books on the unwritten rules in middle and high school that are particularly beneficial. And so just connecting families with those resources. One of the schools I work with also has a library that families can check resources out. So it's books like that that they can use with their middle and high school students at home, and help support the personal hygiene and some of the things that maybe is not in the curriculum.
Yeah, I mean, we don't usually think about teaching social skills, but they're very important. And I'm going to skip the high school one, but I wanted to give you guys, we're closing up now. These are a list of some really cool resources that you guys can use for collaboration. Talk to the ARC of Tennessee. They've got some fantastic stuff, guys. I don't know if you've ever gotten to go to any of their programs, if you've ever gotten to go to any of their parent-friendly nights, and if you've ever gone onto their website. Go to Lesson Picks. You want to create those task analysis, you want to create anything, get your school district to get you a subscription to Lesson Picks. That's where I create half my visuals for my kids from. It's a great program. Teachers pay teachers. You teachers are the experts, remember? Teachers, you know what you like, what you've developed over years. They've got them all online. Toby Dynavox has got some fabulous online trainings for free that you can do if you want to know how to use a communication device with your kids. Reading First, it's the curriculum we're using in Tennessee. Did you know that they have a whole website of things that you can do to add to the curriculum to make it more fun? You don't just have to teach p-a-t, right? You can actually teach they've got a whole curriculum based around what they're trying to teach with Reading First. Harry Wong. Anybody ever heard of Harry Wong? First Days of School. Every new teacher should get a copy of that book. It saved my life my first few years. That book is amazing. Get it, read it. Got some great strategies. YouTube. There's all kinds of fun things you can find on YouTube. The kids are watching it anyway. You're not going to expose them to nothing they haven't seen, right? Disney. Did y'all know there's a whole curriculum from Disney? Like, you can type in Disney curriculum Finding Nemo, and there's actually a whole curriculum you can teach. They do math lessons, reading lessons, science lessons around the kids' favorite shows and programs. Check it out. There's also PBS Kids. Love me some PBS Kids. Had some great programs back in the day. The Great Backyard Bird Count. This is what my kid got into. Did you know every year, it's usually in March, they have you go outside for 1 hour. You count how many birds are in your yard. You type it into the website for the Great Backyard Bird Count. Then they send you an actual map of the birds and where they're migrating to. And you become a part of the national committee to count where migratory birds are going. It helps kids have ownership of their learning experiences and so much more. I want to thank you guys so much. I'm sorry I went a little over my time. Yes, ma'am.
So we do have a comment from online I want to share. And this is from Trista, talking about how we collaborate. And she said she collaborates with all the 5th grade teachers, but mostly math and ELA for inclusion support. And she says that they have PLC meetings weekly, and she is able to attend these meetings with the whole team.
Yes, because she is a vital member of the team. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Any other questions before I go? All right, well, I hope I addressed at least some of your questions, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
So, Krista, thank you so much for being here. Excuse me. This was jam-packed with ideas. I love the fact that you listed the parents, the specialists, the gen ed teachers, all of the people and to talk about how we collaborate. I thought that was very valuable. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
She has energized me with her energy and her ideas.